let me spell out my ideas on climate finance, then I will invite third speaker. Okay, and taking a clue from our Professor Purushottam Reddy Garu, I would like to begin with one important thing. We do not have real, we are seeing the Glasgow COP26 proceedings all these days. We really did not get the impression that they are committed. There is something which is lacking. The commitment is lacking from heads of state and heads of government who have attended from developing and developed nations. If you thoroughly analyze the discussions went on, developed nations representatives were reluctant to contribute to the climate finance. On the other hand, the representatives from developing nations, they lack some kind of commitment in the implementation of climate change. And it will be clear from my presentation that some of the developing nations were trying to influence the UN, saying that let's go ahead in a gradual manner, in a slow manner, so that the targets will be fulfilled, which is not really correct. And next is that NDCs are not really defined and submitted by the Indian government yet. And though the negotiators were there, they were not able to really submit the NDCs. Like this, there are very many issues that can showcase that the commitment of the developing and developed countries is a question mark. Therefore, I'm looking at the climate finance today from the perspective of political economy. It's not climate finance as such, but from the perspective of political economy. Why it is like this? Why it is happening like this? Why the countries are not really coming forward? And if you look at the background of the climate finance, we all know that climate finance remains central to achieving low carbon and climate resilient development. The global climate finance architecture is complex and which is evolving every day to day. On the other hand, the funds flow through mainly international channels, multilateral channels, both within and outside of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement financial mechanisms, and increasingly through bilateral channels, and more importantly through regional and national climate change channels and funds. And now the question is, how do we monitor this flow of funds? Monitoring the flows of climate finance is difficult because there is no agreed definition of climate finance, what it really constitutes, and what are the consistent accounting rules that are adopted by the all these heads of state and government. Further, the wide range of financial mechanisms continues to challenge our coordination efforts. However, efforts to increase the inclusiveness and complementarity and as well as to simplify access will continue. So against the background, now we would like to raise some of the questions. Why the heads of state and government who met at Glasgow were not able to really deliver a concrete agenda, concrete plan by which we will be assured that the mitigation and adaptation measures will be taken forward. What is it that really missing? There are 4 real challenges. Before I could get into my presentation, I would like to say that there are 4 problems. One is the definition of climate change has not been addressed. It is not resolved. Second is, what are the sources of these finances? Is it public resources or private resources? Third one is, what is the methodology? How do we really account these expenditures? That's where we talk about transparency. Transparency need to be mentioned. Accounting procedures need to be spelled out. And finally, counting methodology and what it really consists of. When we say climate finance, does it include grants alone or loans or both? Because if you see the past experience, some of the countries have given loans, some of the agencies have given loans for the mitigation and adaptation measures. And loan cannot be taken as climate finance. Secondly, only grants will be accepted. That's where Oxfam International has conducted a study and informed that only grants will be considered as the climate finance for addressing these conscious and concerted efforts. Now, let's look at the presentation. What is climate finance in terms of United Nations, or as per United Nations definition? The United Nations Framework of Convention on Climate Change refers to climate finance as local, national, or transnational financing drawn from public, private, and alternative sources of financing that seeks to support mitigation and adaptation actions that will address climate change. It is a very broad definition of climate finance, but there are imperatives that we need to emphasize here. One of the important aspects that has been discussed time and again, reaching net zero emissions by 2070. It's in the case of India. Indian government has set a target of 2070. China mentioned 2060, and America and EU has set their target as 2050. And second imperative is build resilience and adapt to accelerating climate change. We know pretty well that we need to improve the resilience of these countries and adapt to accelerating climate change activities so that we can have a cleaner environment. And third one is arresting the degradation and restoring the natural capital, including biodiversity. And now, if we track the draft report that has been released yesterday by the authorities in Glasgow, there are some issues that are really concerning to us. What is it that draft saying about climate finance? Not only they are not really committed to $100 billion, now they are not really mentioning about the special drawing rights. Because when we say that different countries are involved and contributing to the climate finance, and we need to use the special drawing rights, which is nothing but a kind of global money supply, which the IMF has recently issued for climate compatible development. SDRs has not been discussed in anywhere in the draft. Secondly, at the rate of $100 billion for the next 5 years, we need to mop up $500 billion, which is the demand from the developing nations. Further, the draft decision calls for loss and damage finance, stronger climate targets next year, and for the first time ever, a phase out of coal. And I need to bring it to your kind attention that the developed countries have been talking about phasing out of coal alone, but not all fossil fuels. Because all fossil fuels have to be phased out if we are really committed and working towards cleaner environment. And why alone? Why coal alone? That is a question. Secondly, developing countries, including India, are unhappy with the prioritization of climate mitigation measures over adaptation in the draft text. And the prioritization is important. This has been done from the perspective of the developed countries. Thirdly, developing countries need financial support to deal with both aspects of climate change. And we need money. The developing countries need resources for mitigation as well as adaptation. Therefore, you can't prioritize. You can't say that mitigation over adaptation. That is the voice concerned, voice expressed by the developing nations. Now, in this context, civil society organizations have demanded clearly. They said that one is, which is very important, emissions cuts by 2030. The so-called NDCs need to be defined, spelled out. And secondly, on the part of the developed countries, financial assistance to the least developed nations. Therefore, NDCs need to be strengthened and spelled out before the scheduled date of 2025. And secondly, at least $500 billion should be provided in climate finance in the next 5 years by 2025. So these are the important demands made by CSOs. And this graph, please have a look at it. And this is a situation we are going to face it. The world is projected to become warmer by 2100. if the measures are not going to be taken immediately. And if you look at the historical emissions by different countries, it is rising, and the blue shaded area will talk about the current policies, and it is in the range of 2.5 to 2.9 degrees Celsius. And then below that, we have thick blue shaded area, which talk about pledges and targets, which talks about 1.9 to 2.1 degrees Celsius. Then we have optimistic targets with 1.8 degrees Celsius, then pathway, then 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway in green color. And ultimately, we need to achieve the green line, but not the blue, light blue shaded area. This is going to be the situation. Therefore, we need to rise to the occasion, and each and everyone should talk about, debate, discuss, and influence the governments so that the commitments can be made and ambitions can be explained so that the activities will go ahead. Now, as part of the draft report, as regards the draft report that has been released yesterday in Glasgow, India mentioned that there is no need to single out one particular fossil fuel. As I told you just now, there is a need to phase out all the fossil fuels if you are really committed and sincere in working towards cleaner environment. Therefore, developing countries should actually be able to use their fair share of the global carbon budget, and they should be provided with finance, technology transfer, and capacity. Not only finance, they should provide technology transfer and capacity for a just transition in the context of their sustainable development and eradication of poverty. Further, they say that the print magazine has clearly brought out all these issues clearly. The European Union during negotiations said it was the responsibility of all nations, not just developed countries, to improve their disaster management, indicating a resistance to pay. This particular sentence is really horrible, and it is terrific because, and they were indirectly saying that they are not inclined to contribute to the climate finance. It is not the responsibility of developed countries, it is the responsibility of everyone. It means they were trying to, wash off their hands and say that each one of us should contribute to this. But when you look at the historical emissions, these are the 10 industrialized countries which contributed to this particular situation today. And if you look at the situation from the equity perspective, equity has to be embedded in the phase out process when talking about fossil fuels. The document only mentions coal, but what about others? Poorer developing nations are more dependent on coal. We have to talk about all fossil fuels, including gas and oil, which developed countries rely on. So there is a kind of, diplomacy that they are playing with us. They say that leaving gas and oil, they talk about only coal, just because they have been able to complete, work with coal, and now they want to talk about only one particular item. Now let's look at this after the COVID-19 pandemic, how the situation is now. As part of pandemic spending, the developed countries have contributed 11 trillion US dollars. And whereas for climate financing, we are asking only 100 billion US dollars. And what we can say is that pandemic spending dwarfs climate finance. It is a pittance, as rightly said by our professor. It's a very small amount that they can contribute, but they are not really inclined, determined to contribute to our, environment and welfare. Therefore, they are just going back. Further, the draft report says that while about 140 nations have pledged to reach net zero emissions by around the middle of the century, scientists said that their short-term plans for 2030 are not strong enough to limit the rise in temperatures. And though they say that they are pledged to reach net zero emissions, it is not really going to give concrete results. That is the opinion spelled out by the scientists. And interestingly or surprisingly, Saudi Arabia was among a number of countries asking the UN to play down the need to move rapidly away from fossil fuels. And this is according to one leaked document published by the BBC itself, which means some of the countries, some of the developed countries are not really having any commitment. They are trying to, dilute the whole process. They say that let's play down the need to move towards these targets and their achievements. Now coming to transformative imperative of climate finance. When I say transformative climate finance, this particular climate finance will be substantial. It would be sustainable for a longer period of time, and it will become an irreversible process. It's not a one-time event. It should continue because it will take many years to control the situation, control the heat waves and all these effects of climate change. Therefore, the climate finance has to continue as a process, and it should be transformative. And it's not only $100 billion, they need to contribute more and more. Therefore, and we are not only confining to 100 billion, we are talking much more than this. And we know pretty well that what COP26 Accord has mentioned way back in Paris meetings. Developed country parties commit in the context of meaningful mitigation actions and transparency on implementation to a goal of mobilizing jointly $100 billion per year by 2020 to address the needs of developing countries. And if you look at the actual contributions, the current figure of just over $12 billion in grants for climate action falls far short of what is needed. And let me tell you one thing, the draft report and yesterday and day before yesterday meetings in Glasgow revealed that there is a report released by OECD in 2018, which say that $62 billion have been mobilized as against $100 billion. But on the other hand, Oxfam International has estimated it, concluded that 18 to $22 billion only contributed so far. We are far away from the target. And if this is a kind of situation, how do we really address the situation? That's the very important question. Now, how do we really fulfill the targets? The first and foremost thing is that subject of the basis for counting. How do we really count the expenditures made by different countries for climate change activities or mitigation and adaptation activities? We need to spell out, we need to come up with a kind of methodology, which is really missing. Secondly, language of the climate accords, starting with COP16 till today, that talks about public-private sources, and we need to spell out about public agencies and private agencies will contribute by how much and by when. And thirdly, the accords do not specify the proportions of financing from these different sources, nor indicate how different financial instruments, such as grants and loans, should be counted. This, of course, we discussed. And there is a 5-point agenda spelled out by the Government of India. We all know about it. Non-fossil electricity capacity of 500 gigawatts by 2030. 50% electricity capacity from renewables by 2030. 1 billion tons of emission reduction by 2030. 45% reduction in emission intensity of GDP by 2030. And finally, net zero emissions by 2070. Now, if you look at the India's position in view of the recent discussions, despite 2070 a net zero year, its cumulative emissions from 1900 to 2100 would still be lower than that of the US and the EU and China. Secondly, India's transition from peaking emissions to net zero would be faster than any other major economy, which are taking a slow motion route to net zero, stretching from 4 to more than 7 decades. However, there is a need, there is an urgency that the Indian government need to rise to the occasion and contribute towards climate change. And so far, we have not really created any National Commission on Climate Change. Recently, our government has announced about the National Commission on Climate Change, under which we will mobilize some funding and then try to address from our own level. There are some methodological problems when trying to estimate and record the expenditures. The methodological problems include what is climate finance, as I told you in the beginning, what it consists of. Does it include only multilateral and bilateral? Can we really include the private finances from corporates? How do we really motivate the private corporates to contribute to this cause? So these are all methodological problems. And secondly, as several assessments, including the OECD, have pointed out that it is important to have consistent methodologies which are applied to account for mobilized private finance, both by MDBs and bilateral agencies. So the point is that apart from bilateral, multilateral, and a national level funding, we need to encourage, we need to motivate, we need to spell out the responsibility of the contributions from private agencies, corporates who are the real polluters. So therefore, at least in the final document, let's hope that the authorities will include the role of private agencies in contributing towards climate finance. Therefore, the next 5 years are very crucial, starting from 2021. And let's look at this global climate finance architecture for a minute. And we have agencies like the Green Climate Fund, Global Environment Facility. Both of these are very, very important at the global level in mobilizing and distributing the finances for the vulnerable and disaster-prone countries, island nations. Apart from GCF and the GEF, we have Adaptation Fund, we have Climate Investment Funds, as well as non-dedicated funds like IDA, African Development Fund, Asian Development Fund, the concessional windows of MDBs, and the Global Innovation Fund. Yeah, and now this particular slide will talk about what is the conceptual framework on scaling up and transforming climate finance, and how many kinds of finance that we can really mobilize. We have 5 kinds of climate finance mobilizing sources. To begin with, number one is at the bottom level, we have been talking about the 100 billion commitment, and above that we have the bilateral concessional, the funds which are flowing through bilateral channels. Third one is we have multilateral channels, including all those World Bank and others. And then we have DFI system, development financing institution systems, by which we can mobilize the climate finance funding. And finally, which is very important, private finance. Private finance is very, very important. It has been mentioned here. Unless we really rope in private agencies, will not be able to mobilize billions and trillions. Therefore, and we need to discuss and come out with the some kind of solutions in the last report, final report. And this is about Paris Agreement. We all know about it. And I would like to mention 6 climate positive actions mentioned by UN Secretary General. They are very important because these 6 positive actions will talk about how do we really address the issue which is under consideration. One is invest in sustainable jobs and businesses through a clean and just transition. This is very important because most of the countries have been caught up in financial crisis in 2008-9. Then it affected from US to other economies, and still the remnants of that private financial crisis is there in many of the African nations, and there is a lack of sustainable jobs and businesses. Therefore, we need to invest in sustainable jobs and businesses. Secondly, do not bail out polluting industries unless they are aligned to the Paris Agreement. Third is fossil fuel subsidies must end. Carbon must have a price to deliver a market-driven shift to a decarbonized economy. And polluters must start paying for their pollution that is harming communities and so on. And fourth one, take climate risks and opportunities into account in all financial and policy decisions. Fifth one, work together to recover better. Sixth one, the transition to a carbon neutral economy, which must be fair and inclusive. When we say inclusive, we should not leave anyone behind, and we need to include women in a bigger number so that they can take part in decision-making positions. So these are the National Climate Change Funds. And finally, last slide, the way forward. In order to fully integrate climate aligned structural change, in particular, by accelerating the transition to low carbon and climate resilient infrastructure with a strong post-COVID economic recovery, it requires a fundamental shift in the whole finance system and a massive increase in the private finance to get the world from the billions to the trillions that are urgently needed, as set out in the COP26 private finance agenda. So with this, I would like to say thank you. And these are some of the views that I wanted to present. And finally, I want to say once again, engagement of the private sector in developing countries will be a game changer. Therefore, unless the private corporates, companies will come forward to contribute to this cause, and it will not be complete, it will not be a success. Thank you. Now, I will invite third speaker, Madam Sugana, Chartered Accountant. Ma'am, you are there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be sharing